welcome to No Pressure English with Kevin. You're very, very welcome to the podcast. I hope you're keeping well today. First of all, I suppose just a reminder that this is an English language learning podcast for intermediate and advanced learners. There is a transcript available in the description. I recommend checking it out. It's very, very useful, and it is accompanied by a comprehensive glossary with the most difficult words explained. So guys, this is episode 14, and we're going to focus on 5 really nice and common idioms. These idioms are kind of related to the animal kingdom, but they're applicable in the sports world, the business world, and really just in general life. They're used very, very commonly. So I hope that there's something new in here for you, but it's great in any case to be practicing your English, okay, your comprehension skills. So let's jump right in. So the first one we have is to enter the lion's den, and this is to face a very hostile or intimidating opponent or environment or situation. So for example, I'll go with 2 top sports teams in Italy. We could say Juventus and Inter. So there are 2 top teams in Italy. A shout out to Naples and Milan, Atlanta, Roma. These are other great teams as well, and there are many more. But let's just say, for example, that Inter are playing against Juventus. So in this case, Juventus are going to the San Siro to play Inter, and Inter are currently at the top of the league as it stands, which is true at this current moment of time. At the moment of recording this episode anyway. So you could say that Juventus are entering the lion's den. So Juventus are entering the lion's den, and the players are going to face a very hostile crowd and a very difficult situation. You could also say, maybe in tennis we had Rafael Nadal, and I think he won Roland Garros like maybe 13 times or something ridiculous like that. He won the French Open many, many times, but pretty much anyone who faced Nadal at Roland Garros was entering the lion's den. A very hostile, very intimidating situation. He was a very intimidating player, especially on that surface, on clay. But probably the crowd as well naturally sided with the Nadal because he was very popular there. So anyone who faced Nadal in those circumstances was entering the lion's den. In rugby, when the All Blacks play at home in New Zealand, visiting teams are definitely entering the lion's den. The team perform the haka, they're encouraged by the crowd, and the atmosphere is incredibly intimidating for the opposition. We could also use this if you're part of a very small company and you are having a negotiation, but let's say you're going to have a meeting with a company like Google, and maybe Google have a team of 20 legal representatives when you enter the negotiations, and you are there as a simple startup and you maybe have only 1 member of your legal team. Then you would feel like you're entering the lion's den because it's a very intimidating situation. And number 2 on our list is a dark horse. And this is used for someone or a team that's kind of an unexpected competitor who may succeed. So maybe there is a little bit of expectation that they're a strong team or a strong business. The expectation is not that they will succeed, but it's possible. They're the outsider in a sense. Now, using football again, I'm trying to think like the most recent tournaments, kind of World Cups or Euros, Belgium are kind of always considered a dark horse. Like they might do something in a big competition, but for some reason they rarely do. But there's always an outside possibility because they have great players. In the last competition, I think Hungary were tipped or expected to be the dark horse, a possible strong outsider. But in reality, I'm pretty sure it wasn't Hungary. Who was it? I think Austria. Austria ended up being a bit of a dark horse. They were much more difficult to face, and they performed very, very well. And going into tennis with the same expression, because we started with football and tennis, guys, so hey, why not continue? Probably during the reign of the 3 best male tennis players in the world, Djokovic, Nadal and Federer, Andy Murray was a bit of a dark horse. I think he won Wimbledon twice, and maybe the US Open as well. So that was completely unexpected, or maybe not completely unexpected, but he was an outsider in any case. He was always strong there on home ground in Wimbledon, you could say, but he was a dark horse. He was an unexpected competitor who did succeed. He came in and won as a dark horse. In general use, you might say, for example, Sarah's always been quiet in meetings, but she's a real dark horse. Her presentation was brilliant and she got the promotion. Okay, so maybe someone who has a hidden skill or a hidden talent. Okay, the next one we're going to go with is to claw your way back. To claw your way back into something, which is to recover slowly with great effort, to claw your way back into something. Probably the most famous example of this, and if you're not a football fan, I apologize, or if you weren't around, because it could be before your time, before you were born, but back in 2005, it's probably the most famous final of all time, the Champions League final. At halftime, AC Milan were winning 3-0, and then Liverpool clawed their way back into the game and managed to draw the match. So the match finished level, it finished as a tie, and then it went to penalties. So Liverpool won on penalties after extra time. It was a tremendous game because they clawed their way back into the game unexpectedly. All right, guys, another tennis example. Why ruin a good thing? We're staying on these two sports for some reason. I'm thinking of like the French Open again, Roland Garros. Last year, Yannick Sinner and Carlos Alcaraz. So Yannick Sinner was 2 sets up, 2 sets to love. He was winning comfortably. Well, maybe not comfortably, but he was winning. And then Carlos Alcaraz clawed his way back into the final and he ended up winning. It was incredible. And something similar happened many, many years ago. I think in 1999 or 2000, Andre Agassi beat Andrei Medvedev in the final as well in a similar way. I think he was losing 2-0, and after a rain break, he was able to claw his way back into the match and win. So another kind of general business use, you might say, after falling behind in sales for 3 quarters, the company clawed its way back to profitability by the end of the year. So maybe they had a difficult start to the year, or 3 quarters, and then at the end of the year they finished very strongly. So they were able to kind of get back to their previous levels before the start of the year. So our next one is to smell blood. And essentially, what happens when an animal smells blood? Okay, if it's a predator, then it goes after its prey. Okay, and in sports, if a competitor smells blood, it goes after its opponent, or they go after their opponent in this case. So they sense the weakness and they go after their opponent, to become the victor. So in a football match, it might be that one team is losing 1-0, and then they claw their way back into the match and they equalize at 1-1. But then the momentum is with them when they equalize, and they might smell blood. Okay, they know that the momentum is with them and that they can punish their opponents. So again, in football, you might hear this. If one team have a player sent off, you might hear the commentators say, they're smelling blood now. They need to capitalize on this advantage. You might also say, for example, Napoli are smelling blood here in this game and they're going in for the kill. Or in business, the competitor saw our quarterly losses and they're smelling blood. They're trying to poach or steal our best clients. Okay, guys, and we're going to look at number 5, our last idiom today. And this is just a classic. It is the underdog. So who is the underdog? Well, it depends on the sport. It depends on the situation, really. The underdog essentially is the person expected to lose in a contest. In any given match, he'd kind of be the one that the bookies or the betting companies would perceive as the less likely to win. Okay, they could be talented also, but they're less likely to succeed. And this is another reason that I like to watch tennis, to be honest, because if you watch, for example, Wimbledon, if one player starts winning nearly in unison, everyone in the audience starts to support the weaker player, the underdog. They become the underdog. Sometimes even if they're seeded higher, they become the underdog because they're losing at that moment. Because people want it just to be an equal contest and they want it to be a really hard-fought win in any case. So people love to support the underdog. And it's true. In Ireland, for example, in football, we are always the underdog, essentially. So we're always the lower ranked team, and there's less expectation, and that's why we really enjoy when we win. Okay, so we love the underdog status in a sense. And in general kind of use, you might say that everybody loves an underdog story. It gives us hope that we can overcome the odds too, or that we can succeed even in kind of a difficult situation. Alright guys, I hope you've enjoyed this episode on sports idioms from the animal kingdom that can be applied in versatile situations. Yeah, remember, idioms like these add colour and energy to your English. So try to notice them when you're watching sports or reading news articles. And hey guys, have a great week. Ciao.